I guess where I really want to start this morning. So Myles Garrett's just doing interviews now. He's just on Radio Row. Very convenient. Good for him. I mean, his agent probably, I thought, would be doing a good job by telling him, like, you should go down to New Orleans and you should go on every show that will have you. And because you are the story of the league right now, every show will have you. And you can craft your message the way you want it. You can not come off like the bad guy. The Browns might try to paint you as such, so you get out in front of that. And there was Myles Garrett on the Rich Eisen show. I think he did maybe one other show at least. But he did a long sit-down with the Rich Eisen show. And, like, man, he's getting out of Cleveland. There's no doubt in my mind he is getting out of Cleveland. We had a guest on earlier in the week from Cleveland on this situation. Like, the Browns don't have to trade him. You got a contract. 2 years left on your deal. And I am very pro-player in these situations. Very pro-player. I mean, in the NBA, Kevin Durant made a comment that is completely true, I think, across all of sports, that you as the player are expected to be loyal to the team and loyal to your contract, and the team is never held to the same standard. Never. He was talking about the Luka trade. Luka, and he is, you can believe him if you want. I have no reason to not believe him. Luka has said repeatedly since he got traded that he was ready to sign that Supermax extension that they have in the NBA with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, he was ready to do it. He was ready to commit to being a Maverick for the rest of his playing career. And they traded him. And had it been flipped the other way, and he demanded out of Dallas, he would be painted as traitor, villain, right? I guess the Mavericks are being painted that way a little bit by their own fans, the GM. But you know what I mean. I want to be on the player end of things a lot because the team doesn't get held to the same standard as the player does. So here's Myles Garrett, and I think he's completely within the right for wanting out. He's 29 years old. He is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. By the way, we're going to find out the Hall of Fame class today as well. Get some Eli Manning takes in along the way. Garrett is an incredible player, and he is at an age where, like, you got to go. You got to do it now. You only get to play once. And if you want to be making the big moments in the biggest of games, how could you possibly believe that's going to happen with the Cleveland Browns coming up soon? Why wouldn't the guy want to go to the Bills or the Commanders or the Eagles or whoever else you're seeing high up on these odds lists? He wants to go make these plays that he normally makes in the AFC Championship game to lead somebody to a Super Bowl. That's it. So I think he's getting out. Long story short, I think he's going to get out of Cleveland. I don't think there's any debate about it. 2 years left in his contract means nothing. The Browns, if they wanted to, if he was a diminished player, they'd move on from him in a heartbeat. Play out your contract. All right. Team, let him play out his contract. Why doesn't it have to work the other way? So in this situation, Garrett's getting out. Does anyone want to make the argument against the Bills doing it? Does anybody even want to make a case why the Bills shouldn't do this? It is sometimes when an idea is completely unanimous, I do want to take a step back and look at it and say, okay, can it be this easy? It has to be this good of an idea. It has to be an automatic yes. And I did that with Myles Garrett here. I read Kevin Cole, who had a good breakdown comparing Garrett to other elite pass rushers when they turned 30 and what the decline looked like and how, even Von Miller went from like the best defensive end in the league to he was really, really good, but he wasn't the best anymore. He wasn't Defensive Player of the Year anymore. And he maintained that level really until he was 34 years old and he tore his knee against the Lions for the Bills. And then, then it went away. Although even this year, as we've pointed out, Vaughn was top 10 in the league in pass rush win rate. Like, he kind of bounced back this year better than I thought he would. Didn't put up big sack numbers. So, all right. And Aaron Donald, who I know plays defensive tackle and defensive end when he was in the league, more so defensive tackle, he maintained that level into his 30s a little bit better, but still wasn't the 20.5 sack guy that he was in his mid-20s, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of examples of, all right, small step back early in your 30s, big step back maybe in your mid-30s. And a lot of guys can stay at like a level of, hey, part-time defensive end, I'm a one-trick pony, I play on third and longs, and I'm just a pass rush specialist. Some of those guys do it late into their careers. James Harrison played in the NFL until he was in his 40s. Dwight Freeney. Dwight Freeney, anyone remember him on any of these teams? Dwight Freeney went, after he turned 34, Chargers, Cardinals, Falcons, Seahawks, Lions. Does anybody remember him on any of those teams? But, hey, he played till 37. Right? He played. He was around a lot. Was not, all-pro Dwight Freeney at the end, but still played and had an 8-sack year down there at the end. Terrell Suggs, he played till 37. At 37, he had 6.5 sacks. At 36, he had 7 sacks. At 35, he had 11 sacks. Again, not what Terrell Suggs was when he was a first-team All-Pro, but pretty productive. So, when I look at Garrett, I guess why there isn't really, to me, a great argument against it is where the Bills are coming from at the position and what you would expect him to be even if there is a decline. Like Garrett, if he's the best defensive end in the league right now, which I think is debatable between him and TJ Watt, but I think you could say it's Garrett. If he's the best in the league right now, how long do I need him to be that to make the trade worth it? Do I need what? Do I need 1 year of that to make it worth it? 2 years of that? It depends how much you win, right? If you only get 1 year of it and the Bills win the Super Bowl, then of course it was worth it. If you get 1 year of it and they make the Super Bowl, then it's probably still worth it. If you get, to me it's more though about, for this conversation, what do I expect to get out of him after, if he's another year further as a 15-sack guy and he's an AP first-team All-Pro and he's Defensive Player of the Year consideration again, then what do I expect him to become after that? And I just don't think it's going to be bad. Injuries can happen, but injuries can happen to anybody. I think it would almost be unprecedented if you look around at the other players of his caliber at the position over the decades, because you can't really find a lot of comparisons. Like, we're working from a small sample size. There have not been that many defensive ends as good as Myles Garrett. What do they all have in common? They all are pretty good still in their 30s, if not still great, and they oftentimes play into their late 30s, and as I mentioned, sometimes they even make it to 40. I think Julius Peppers is another one, by the way, that made it to 40. Peppers playing with, like, the Bears at the end of his career. Yeah, Peppers played, to 38. But even look at that one. Julius Peppers, all right. Not a bad comparison, right, to Garrett. Garrett actually, if you compare their 20s, Garrett had more sacks. Garrett had more All-Pro accolades. Garrett had more Defensive Player of the Year awards. Garrett had more of everything. Julius Peppers is a Hall of Famer and one of the best, that I grew up watching. He was on the All-2000s team that the Hall of Fame did and the All-2010s team. Like, he's an all-time great pass rusher, Julius Peppers. And what did he do in his 30s? Had you signed him to a contract at 29 years old, how would that have gone? All right, his age 30 season, first team All-Pro. Pretty good. 31, 11 sacks. 32, 11 and a half sacks. Right? 33 and 34, 7 each. Okay, now you might be thinking to yourself, All right, here's the decline that you see sometimes. Oh, wait, no, he bounced back with 10.5. Interesting. He gets 11 sacks then after that at 37 years old. I'm not banking on that, but because injuries can happen, and, this Peppers example is not everybody. But I would not just assume you're not going to like the end of the Myles Garrett contract if you pay him a monster contract. That's the benefit of getting somebody that is, one, this good, and two, at his age. He's not Von. He's 5 years younger than what Von was when the Bills signed him. So, the best I've heard for why you shouldn't do it, which is related to his age and what the end of the contract might look like, I'm just not assuming for sure, and I want to say even betting, that he's not still going to be an impact player at the end of a long-term massive contract that you would be giving him. And that's not even why I'm doing it. Right? I'm doing it for the next couple of years to try to win a Super Bowl right now because of what he is right now. If they had to give up Greg Rousseau in a deal for Myles Garrett right now. Cleveland wants him, and it's $20 to $25 million a year for him. And the Bills, if they're going to pay Garrett $30 to $35 million, they're not going to also want to pay Rousseau, and so on and so forth. If you were to trade Rousseau, what you're losing, you would think is, well, I've got more longevity with this guy. I've got more term, assuming this guy is going to continue to be good. I got 5-6 years of Greg Rousseau. Who's to say? This is kind of why I like the idea of a star player coming to the Bills right now. Because, again, if the one argument against getting Garrett, or maybe the top argument against him, is his age and what the end of a contract would look like, is a declined Myles Garrett as good as Greg Rousseau? It's very possible. If he goes from the best pass rusher in the world, best edge rusher, to the 5th best, to the 10th best, and now at 34 years old, he's the 15th best, 20th best. Aren't I kind of right where I started? There's money stuff there too, but I don't think it holds up I don't think it's kind of flimsy. It's assuming a lot. Thank you. Someone on Twitter just pointed out Bruce Smith was 40. How'd I miss that one? Bruce Smith was 40 when he retired. And what was he at the end of his career? Again, I hate to go back to a guy that played in the 80s and then into the early 2000s, but there are just so few guys of Myles Garrett caliber throughout his career. Yeah, Bruce had 9 sacks in Washington when he was 39 years old. This is a position where guys can last a long time. Von, it just didn't really happen because of the injury. And he did bounce back. So that's one big argument against it that I'm not on board with as a real, threat. It's one I'd be happy to bet against. And then the other one is just what it costs draft capital-wise. And I don't know. We're heading into draft season here, and we gotta remind ourselves or reset on what we all think these picks are actually worth, and what they're actually worth when you're picking where the Bills do, which is at the end of the first round this year, 30th. What is that pick actually worth? And it's not worth nothing. But, yeah, we did this earlier in the week. If you look at the trade value charts, what do 2 picks that are 30th overall in the first round equate to in the draft? And they add up to, a pick in the teens. If you look at one trade value chart where 30 is worth 620 points on this draft value chart, so double that, 1,240. It's worth the 11th pick. We've had this conversation over the years. Last year was about trading up, right? Trading up to get Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors, one of those big top 3 rookie receivers last season, we talked a lot about the Bills moving up. And one drawback, and maybe one reason why they couldn't do it, and one reason you maybe heard Brandon Beane on Hard Knocks kind of indicate when he was talking to Joe Shane of the Giants, and there was another GM involved in that conversation, like why Beane kind of said he couldn't do it is I don't have it. You're not taking the 30th pick this year and the 30th pick next year so that I can go up in the draft. And even the draft, remember, up there, it's a crapshoot. If they'd done that, I would have been so happy on draft day. It would have been super exciting. They would have gone up and they would have got Rome Odunze. That would have felt amazing. It would have felt like I'm getting a sure thing, surefire number 1 wide receiver. I think he's better than Keon Coleman, but would we feel good about that today if they had traded all of that to get Rome Odunze? Tough hypothetical, right? Because he kind of had a middling rookie year, but what was the environment? He was on an offense with a rookie quarterback where he was the number 3 option because they had Keenan Allen and DJ Moore in front of him. He had a really bad offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron. So, what would he have done here? Probably would have gone a lot better, if we're being real. And then maybe that changes, this whole hypothetical here. But if they had done that, might not have felt great. We might not feel great right now. They probably would not have a first-round pick heading into March. And then, man, how mad would we be? Because if we want Myles Garrett, it's like, oh, I don't have a first-round pick this year. Do they want to take 2 seconds instead? And now I'm not picking till round 3. Like, I understand that the top of the draft, to me, is more of a crapshoot even than Myles Garrett is. You're getting the rookie contract. That's a bonus that you don't get with Garrett. But I think trading up is a good debate. And a lot of times I do like it. But it's not perfect, and it is risky. I don't see the risk, I guess. I look at this whole thing, the scope of it, what he is as a player, the age, the contract, the price, and I have a hard time seeing the real risk of it. The risk is I'm not going to have now 2 picks in the late 30s, so what? I won't be as flush with depth, and I won't be able to fill my holes as much. But what are their holes? They need 1 corner, and they need 1 depth receiver. I mean, maybe they could do better than that, than a depth receiver, but is that it? They need a lineman. They got like 3 spots on the team that they really need to go address. And the Bills should feel like that another reason Beane, I think, should feel freed up to be as aggressive as he wants for a player like this, for a star like this, is your coach and your process and your program and the way you draft continues to churn out productive players that you didn't invest a lot in. Like, okay, I don't have my first-round pick this year now. I'm basically spending that on Myles Garrett, right? I'm basically giving a first-round pick next year to have the right to use my 30th pick this year on Myles Garrett. That's one way to kind of look at it. The Bills then, okay, you want to say they don't have as many assets to fill holes. Look what they do all the time. They just plug in Christian Benford as a 6th-round rookie and develop him into one of their best defensive players. They just plug in, even on a lesser level, Jamarcus Ingram. Who? Where did he come from? Oh, he's just starting one of these games against the Dolphins and he's got 2 interceptions. Like, oh, okay. Where are they getting Terrell Bernard, 3rd-round pick? Just develop him into a starting caliber linebacker, right? Taylor Rapp, he's just a 1-year, $4 million player. Keep him around. Whether it's free agency or it's the end of the draft or it's even these undrafted guys, the Bills have shown an ability to draft and develop players of lesser level talent and mold them into responsible players that don't make a lot of mistakes and you can play in starting roles if you have to. Cam Lewis is another one. And their ability to do that makes me more confident in them going and getting Garrett and having to face a couple of years without a first-round pick. I feel like they'd get by. How different are the players they're getting in the first round versus later in the draft anyway? Rousseau is a pretty good player. Ed Oliver's a pretty good player. Kyrie Elam is not. And I look at the later stages of those drafts and go, okay, yeah, Terrell Bernard's a pretty good player. Khalil Shakir's a pretty good player. Christian Benford's a pretty good player. Spencer Brown is a pretty good player. These are all guys who were drafted after the third round that, to me, just as good as the guys they picked in the first round. 803-0550 is the phone number. Does all this make sense? Anyone want to make any case why the Bills shouldn't do this? Or if you want to make the case for why they should, let us know what you think. And we'll get some MVP stuff today, too, because we're going to find out tonight. How much do we care? Because I don't think we care as much as we did during the regular season.